All right. We are talking SpaceX IPO, the biggest IPO of all time. And there's a lot of smart analysis out there. This ain't that. Sam, what did you call it? The two guys in a truck version of this? What did you say?
Two idiots in an S1.
I feel like I could rule the world. I know I could be what I want to. I put my all in it like no days off. On the road, let's travel, never.
So this is for, look, there's going to be people who are smarter, wealthier, more technical than us that are explaining SpaceX, but we promise to be the most relatable analysis you're going to get. Because I wanted to nerd out on this myself. I was like, should I be buying this IPO? Should I be buying this stock? And in order to do that, I was like, okay, let me sit down for a couple hours and just try to understand what even is this business? How does it work? Is this massively overrated? Is it underrated? How should I think about this? What do they even do? And so that's where I spent some time. Sam was picking through the S1, trying to find some of the more interesting, quirky, people aren't talking about this, but check this out, style nuggets. So that's what we're going to try to do in the next hour or so.
I'll just play the character. It's all acting, but what would you say SpaceX does?
Okay, so SpaceX, what do? SpaceX builds rockets. I think that's the primary thing that they do. They build rockets, ideally rapidly reusable rockets, and they could take stuff into space. Now, why do you want to take stuff into space? Well, one version of take stuff into space, and the origin of the company is, let's take man to Mars. So how do we become multi-planetary as a species? That was the, way, way back. That was the original mission, still, a part of the mission. And I guess the origin of that was that they, Elon, after he sold, I think it was PayPal. After PayPal sold, he made a few $100 million, $200 million or so. And he was interested and excited about when NASA was going to go to Mars. Oh, I wonder where the Mars mission is at for NASA. And he goes on the website, he looks it up, sees nothing about a Mars mission. He's like, wait, we went to the moon in, 79. We have nothing planned to go past that?
Like he's planning a vacation. He's like, hey, so I have some free time. Let's see if we can take the kids to Florida and watch a rocket take off. How cool would that be?
Exactly. And so he was looking at that. Okay, it's not happening. So then he thought, oh man, going to space, going to the moon, that's a very inspiring thing. What if we funded a mission to take, I think it was like a plant, it's like a little succulent or something, into space, and it'll, let's take life to Mars. Life, technically speaking, because it's a plant. And he thought, oh, that'll just generate some excitement, some buzz. It'll kickstart more enthusiasm around space. And that was the original idea. He goes to Russia. He tries to buy rockets from the guys in Russia, like an old ICBM missile, basically. And they laugh at him. They sort of spit in his face. He realizes, oh, shit, after 2 trips to Russia, this ain't going to work. And like any good entrepreneur doesn't take no for an answer. like any stubborn genius does, he decides, I guess I'll build my own. He took that personally.
Dude, when I was a kid during 4th of July, or for some holiday, we would drive over the river to go to Illinois because they sold bottle rockets there and they didn't sell them in Missouri. Elon and I are basically the same thing.
Same.
Just if he is, he's 200 million times richer and 200 IQ points higher, but very similar.
Yeah. But I relate.
Yeah.
If you have SpaceX, so do you know their business model? What do they actually do?
When I was reading through the S1, one of my big revelations was they do so much stuff. And frankly, I don't entirely know how it all contributes to the same thing. But I do know that the main reason why he started was that reusable rockets is the best way to make going to space happen because you can make things cheaper.
So yes, that's correct. So they have, let's say, 3 core components here. Or I should say 4. So they have launches, they have Starlink, they have X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, and then they have XAI. And those 4 are the 4 components of what SpaceX currently does, with some new things coming online. Like they have something called the Terafab, where he's building the largest chip factory in the world. So that's
What are
TBD.
the chips? What are the chips going to be used for? Their own rockets?
Their own AI. So basically, he's got XAI, which is his AI company, and Terafab is basically his way of getting ahead of what he believes is the chip bottleneck in the world, which is there needs to be more chip production, ideally in the United States. So again, if the current manufacturers of chips are already booked out 5-6 years in advance, already at capacity, and the world needs more chips for AI, we'll go ahead and build the largest chip factory in the world, the fab.
Sarah, my wife and I, we took a road trip and we stayed at a motel, and they only had rooms with 2 twin beds at the Motel 8. And she was sad. She was like, I want to sleep in the same bed as you. It's so weird. And so I just got rid of the middle drawer and I pushed the 2 twin size beds together. And I said, we don't need a king size bed. We have a super bed. And that is sort of what Elon has done with this company. You know, it's all of these, he just made a super bed. That's just
except he kind of put like one of the, you know, like what's the little footrest thing called? That's like Twitter. He's like, yeah, it'll just be here at the bottom, because the only downside when you look at the analysis of this thing is that, you know, Twitter revenue is like half of what it was when he bought it. So that one hasn't really worked out. But he rolled it together with all this other great stuff so that the investors did well, even though that business didn't do so hot since then.
So he has a super company. Let's hear.
He has a super company. The company's going public right now. It's the largest IPO in history. I believe it's going public at $1.75 trillion, which is very polarizing because you have, on one side, people who are rational, logical creatures who look at this and say, wow, so it's 100 times revenue? Like, that's pretty insane. What are we buying here exactly? And on the other side, you have the cult of Elon, and you have people who are bullish on the future of technology, who just believe that, like, in Elon we trust. And it's not about the price to earnings ratios. It's not about price to sales. It's about, you know, the price to Elon ratio. And if it's an Elon company, you're going to have 10 times the price you would probably otherwise have in a company. And so it's a very interesting company that's going public because it's so huge. And you have people who are so passionate on both sides, like a sports team or like a religion. And I guess the idea here is, can we try to understand what's actually going on and maybe come to our own conclusions?
So just to put this in context, the word trillion has been thrown around a lot. You know, Anthropic is about to go public or something like that. You know, it's worth around $1 trillion or 900 billion. Same with OpenAI. This word trillion is being thrown around a lot. And I want to put this into context because a trillion's really, really hard to understand. A billion's hard to understand. A million, a lot of people can understand that. So a million, if it were seconds, a million is 11.5 days. 100 million, which is an astronomical number. Let's say if you have $100 million, if you have a $100 million company, that's a really big company. That's 3.2 years, if 100 million seconds. A trillion is 32,000 years. Isn't that incredible? It's hard to fathom how large a trillion is.
That's insane. And when this IPO happens, Elon will be the world's first trillionaire on paper, at least.
And we're talking 2 trillion, right? So that's 60,000 years if it were seconds. That's a lot. Yeah. That's so large.
So, okay, so let's explain a little about the company. So, hey, I want to tell you about something pretty cool. We have a database of all of the unsexy business ideas that have been discussed on this podcast. So hundreds of episodes, the team at HubSpot went through, they pulled out all the unsexy ideas. So not the super high-tech ones, but the simple, relatable, interesting, profitable ideas that we have brainstormed, and they're all available for download for free. Just click the link in the description below. Thank you to our friends at HubSpot for sponsoring this podcast and putting together this free resource for you guys. Back to the show. On the different dimensions that I mentioned, launches, they dominate. They're like the Google search of launching rockets. They launch, I think, something like 80 to 85% of all the payload that goes into space goes through SpaceX. There might be a second, there's a second place technically, but the gap is so large. And so they dominate the launch category. Now, what do they launch? They take satellites up into space. They take satellites for the government, but they also, I think about 40% of their launches are just for their own satellites for this product called Starlink. So if you don't know what Starlink is basically internet service. Specifically, it's really great at giving you internet in places that have shitty internet. So rural areas, remote areas, countries where the infrastructure gets damaged or blocked during wars. Starlink basically gives you internet anywhere. It's great for airplanes. It's great for boats. Anywhere you can have internet that's traditionally quite difficult to get. And this Starlink business is gangbusters. So it is basically up it's quadrupled in the last 2 years. They have 10 million paying subscribers to Starlink Internet. It makes like $11 billion a year in revenue. It's like 40% EBITDA margins. It's recurring revenue. So the Starlink business has like all of the wonderful characteristics of a business. There's no competitors. They have an extreme cost advantage. It's recurring revenue. It's extremely high margin. And it's a product that everybody on Earth, essentially needs is the internet. And they specifically solve the problem in rural areas. So Starlink is very, very interesting as like, that's the cash cow of this business.
Which is new. It's only like 4 years old, I think.
Only like 4 years old. And there's, by the way, some crazy story about how like the Starlink team, they worked in Seattle and the project was kind of going nowhere. So he's like getting status updates and he gets really frustrated one day. And then he goes like, you ever seen that episode of Entourage where Ari Gold walks into the office with a paintball gun and just starts blasting people that he's laying off? That's basically what they did to the Starlink project. They went there and they just were like, what the hell is going on? Nuked everybody, restarted from scratch. And then, it now is like one of the greatest sort of businesses in the world right now is just the Starlink business unit inside of SpaceX.
Okay, so that's easy to understand. That's pretty straightforward.
That's easy to understand. And then and you might think, okay, well, how big is this sort of rural internet thing? Well, in the US, there's, probably tens of millions of people who will be subscribers to this, maybe like another 30, 40, 50 million on top of the 10 million that they already have. But then you have all around the world, there's huge, 50% of the earth basically has shitty internet coverage. So we're talking about like parts of Africa and India, whatever. Now, the problem is those people don't have a lot of money. So they're not paying the same kind of $1,000 a year that people in the US are paying for Starlink. So there's a question about what that's going to be worth. But then they have this other thing called direct to sell. You know about this?
No.
Okay, so direct to sell is basically if you've ever been, driving and you're like, oh, I just my call dropped. I hit a dead zone.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe you're driving on a bridge, or maybe you're just like, oh yeah, this one area on my route to work always has like shitty service. Well, they basically can now do Starlink from the satellite direct to your cell phone. So you don't need the little satellite dish like you need for the home internet service. You don't even need that. It just goes straight to your phone. So they partner with T-Mobile, for example. And so in areas where you have crappy reception, you'll still be able to send text messages. You'll still be able to download some data. You'll still be able to make a phone call. And so they're basically looking at this like whether they launch their own T-Mobile, right? They launch their own Starlink, just that's what you use for your cell phone plan. Or it's this little add-on to every cell phone plan on Earth where it's like, oh yeah, and for an extra $3 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, like you just have guaranteed coverage everywhere. When you don't have good service, it falls back to satellite service. And so they're like, yeah, that's going to be pretty big because there are, the market for, internet services across cell phones and home internet is like $2 trillion or something. And they actually have, and by the way, there's no differentiation really between any of these. If you go to T-Mobile or AT&T or whatever, they're all Verizon. They're all essentially the same
Which
service.
Commercial do you like best?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's all the same thing.
Who is Patrick Mahomes like your favorite player or you hate him? That's going to decide who you go with. And so they're the first ones to go into that space with something that's actually a different proposition, which is like, hey, our service works everywhere. Those don't. And secondly, it can be lower cost because of the way they're doing it in space. They don't have to do ground build outs of towers. So that's kind of like the kind of core business. They got so good at launching rockets that it became cheaper and cheaper. I think they basically brought the cost of taking like a kilogram to space down by 50 or 100x what it was pre-SpaceX. So they have like if it cost $100 before, it now costs $1 or $2, right? As an equivalent of like how big the cost drop was. And they keep doing that. So wherever they are today, when they have their new rocket, Starship, it's going to be half of what it currently is. So they're just like have a massive cost and volume advantage in launches. That lets them have the satellite business, which lets them have Starlink, okay? So that's kind of the business as it is today. Then you say, well, what's the next unlock? And if you look at their investor presentation, it's all about data centers in space. And you're like, when you hear this, you think, I don't know what you think. What the hell? You think about like literally a building floating in space.
Yeah, it's hard to fathom. I think like we're colonizing the moon or Mars or something like that. But I also think like, is there not enough room here? Like it's sort of, it's unfathomable. So that's hard to understand.
The answer is we got plenty of room. It's hard. It's a little slow to build and expensive to build. And there's some shortages like in turbines and things like that to build. But the real problem is literally just red tape. It is easier to figure out how to launch the heaviest rocket ever and build a data center in space than it is to get like, Alameda County to approve of a data center in your backyard. That is literally the problem. There is so much regulation and so much anti-data center backlash that the people who even have the money and the engineering chops and the power and the reserved equipment to be able to build, they can't build in the United States, which is kind of insane.
Well, what's really, so think about this. So I'm a history nerd. So one of many reasons why the American Revolution happened was when American colony folks, they started taking over what is now America. They started going further and further out west, and they started having a lot of fights with Native Americans. And the colonists were like, hey, England, like, we need some help. We're supposed to like be your country. Come protect us. And England's like, dude, it's so far away. It takes us 4 weeks to get there. And plus, once you're there, it's like 3,000 miles long. We can't do this. You guys, I know we said that you can go everywhere else, but please, you got to come back in. And George Washington was like, no, this is my land. This is my land. You're not going to tell me what to do with my land. Screw you guys. And that was one of the reasons why there was tension. And it sort of begs the question that when you go the figurative Wild West space, when everyone's doing their own thing, what's going to happen in 50 or 100 years when people are like, okay, now we actually have to like rein this in. What are we going to do? Who gets what? And that's actually another thing that's quite challenging to understand. It's sort of like sectioning off the ocean or water or something like that. Like who gets what area of space or Mars or moon?
Well, the moon, I think definitely, right? Because it's actually like a limited land area versus space, which is, the biggest thing ever.
I don't know enough about this to know like what's true, but like, are there like highway routes that satellites take where it's like, this is like the best route. And like, we can only have so much like debris in this.
I don't think so. I mean, maybe there's some future state where space travel is so cheap and easy that so many people want in and the demand is so high that now we're running out of space in space. Like maybe, but like that's not the problems today. The problems of today are, wow, it's really expensive and hard to get permitting to build on land. So it's such a like, I'm going to take my ball and go home, or just like the, men will do anything to avoid therapy type of conclusion.
We'll go to space.
Well, I guess we'll just go to build it in space then. I don't even want to talk to it. Like I want so little to do with politics that I'd rather build this in space and I'd deal with the engineering. So the big risk of this company right now is two questions. The first is, are they going to be able to build something called Starship? It's like their big ass rocket, way bigger than the Falcon 9. And so I think it carries like 7 to 10 times more payload than the Falcon 9. And so if, Falcon 9's bringing up let's call it 10 satellites at a time, this thing will bring up 70 satellites at a time. And so they haven't yet been able to get Starship to work. They're building it. They're testing it. It's taking years. When they do it, it'll be the most impressive rocket and probably the most impressive like feat of engineering in human history. But there's a question of if. So some people might not believe that they'll ever get Starship to work.
That tends to be a foolish bet.
Yeah. Betting against Elon's technical ability has proven to be like the most unprofitable bet you could make. Even if you're right for a year or two, you're eventually wrong. And so one question is Starship ever going to happen? And can they make it rapidly reusable so that it could fly? Like he was talking on a podcast and he was talking about it like, yeah, we're going to do whatever, 10,000 launches. And the guy was like, so wait, so that means like you're launching like multiple times a day, obviously, right? Like you're launching
30 launches a day.
times a day. And he's like, yes. And they're like, but you can't even launch one right now. He's like, yes. And they're like, so it's going to be, and he's like, it's like an airport. You know how many times a plane takes off a day? And he's like, we are going to launch that many times in a day. It'll be like airports. It'll be like, we figured out how to make cars reusable, how to make airplanes reusable. We are going to figure out how to make rockets rapidly reusable so you can land, turn it around, launch it again. Land, turn it around, launch it again. Just like an airplane lands, they clean out the get your crumbs off the seat. And then they go and, 45 minutes later, it's up in the air again. And that's like a key part of how air travel became cost effective. They're trying to do the same thing with rockets. And so one bet is the Starship thing ever going to happen? And then if so, there's another set of doubt or risk or uncertainty, which is, can you even do data centers in space? Is this even going to work? And there's people who argue that, one of the reasons you put it in space is not just the red tape, it's the cost. So basically, one way of thinking about this that Elon talks about is that the entire game is taking energy from the sun and so turning those like photons, basically, or electrons, into tokens for AI. Like that's kind of like the pipeline. That's kind of the world, where the world is going, is we are going to need an insane amount of AI tokens, whether that's for, ChatGPT-like things, whether that's for digital employees, work that's being done, whether it's for science and medicine, whether it's for robots. Like we're going to need a shit ton of AI in the future. It's pretty hard to bet against that. So then the question is, who could be the low-cost provider of tokens? And basically, if you look at when you have a satellite in space, it's powered by the sun. You don't need any cooling because space has space is basically freezing cold and has like a radiative whatever cooling mechanism where as the chips get hot from being used, there's like a natural physical mechanism to cool them down. Some people argue against that, but Elon believes it's no problem. And that basically streaming AI tokens from space is going to be far cheaper and more effective than any land build out of data centers and then figuring out how to transmit those. And the physics, the papers, the question is, can they build it? And historically, Elon is very good at doing this. He's very good at taking no market risk, meaning if I could make this, you'd want it, right? And it's like, yes. Then the only question is, can I make it? And the answer for him has always been yes. And so that's kind of where we're at with this business.
This string of letters that we're putting together to make words into sentences is like the words that are coming out of your mouth right now are wild to me. I'm just learned German yesterday. Yeah, it's just the fact that language has changed so much that in the last 5 years, it has come to the point where we're now saying we're going to go to space to create AI. Imagine explaining this to someone. There's this old man that I hang out with in my building who's 96 years old, and every once in a while I go down to his room and he tells me like where he was when JFK died, and he'll tell me cool stories. Just imagine like explaining this to him. It's like, well, it's just crazy how fast humans progress.
How old's your daughter? She's 2?
Yeah.
Okay, so you haven't quite reached this point, but like my kids are like, how does TV work? And I'm like, honestly, I have no idea. And, they're like, so wait a minute. So this is happening right now somewhere else? I'm like, yeah, there's a guy with a camera. How does the camera work? Couldn't really tell you. But he's got something called a camera. And that sort of gets like piped into like those towers. There's like cables on the road. You see those? There's like satellite and like there's Wi-Fi. That's a tough one too for me. Bluetooth. It's kind of like Wi-Fi, but something's different there for sure. And it's showing up on our TV. And where's the remote? Right? I've had to experience I've been humbled by my kids so many times trying to just even explain the current shit that I don't understand.
Yeah, I wonder if these analysts who are asking him questions, do they ever just say yeah, f it? You know what I mean? I don't know.
There are so many things that boggle my mind about today's technology. So I'm with you that this sounds mind-boggling.
That's
but
crazy, but also
current shit too.
But also that someone is audacious enough to keep pushing. Okay, we did that. What about this? What about this? What about this?
Right.
And to have that open mind, these are engineering feats, but these are also personality feats. Just like when Joey Chestnut ate 70 hot dogs at the Coney Island hot dog contest when the previous record was 19. That's what we're dealing with right now, and it's just unfathomable.
It really is.
Hey, let's take a quick break. You know that feeling when strategy is done, the brief is written, everyone's aligned, and you realize someone still has to sit down and actually create all the content? That someone is usually you, and it's due tomorrow. Well, the Breeze Assistant from HubSpot can help. It works right inside HubSpot. You can draft campaign copy, blog posts, emails, all in your brand voice, all using your actual customer data. So you don't create just content, you create content that converts. Check out HubSpot.com, the agentic customer platform for growing businesses.
What about Twitter and XAI? Okay, so that's kind of insane to me. The fact that a rocket company owns Twitter.
Yeah. When you invite someone to your party and then they bring that friend?
Yeah.
That's kind of the Twitter problem right now.
And I think it was sold for $250 billion to SpaceX. Is that right?
So I did a lot of my thinking with Claude yesterday for this, and I had Claude build me my own deck about SpaceX. here's one of the things about Twitter. So Twitter's ad business is 40% the size of old Twitter. So X advertising is at 1.8 billion now. It's down 100 million from last year, and it's half of what the ad revenue was before he bought it in 2021, 5 years ago. He added subscriptions and payments, whatever. So that's now $1 billion in ARR. So the total, is 2.8 billion, and it was 4.5 when he bought it. So the
Great.
X stuff has not quite worked. He did figure out how to spin it, right? So he figured out, okay, the X business is not that great, and I can't get the engagement to be as high as, WhatsApp or Instagram or TikTok or any of these other apps. But what it does have is data. And maybe I can use that data to power Grok. And then he tried Grok. Now Grok is falling behind Anthropic and ChatGPT. So he said, but he, again, I think that one of the great hallmarks of entrepreneurship is basically failing forward. And so maybe in the same way that X sort of failed forward into like, oh, well, it gave Grok some differentiation, but then Grok hasn't quite kept up with everything else. He used his Grok asset, where he's trying to build a ChatGPT Anthropic competitor, even though it's way, way behind. He built the largest data center for training AI, Colossus. And he's really good at building the machine that builds the machine. So he's basically what he's the best at is building factories at this point. And so, Tesla has its own factories and produces, an enormous amount of cars faster than anyone else, designs and builds. He's doing it now with the Terafab. He does it with the rockets. He did it with data centers here. So he built the largest cluster of GPUs, bigger than Google, bigger than Facebook, bigger than anyone. The problem is he doesn't have enough users. So he has this he bought a huge mansion and doesn't have any friends to come over to entertain.
Well, because what does Twitter have? I think you say 500 million. That's shockingly, 500 million is still, this is amazing, a niche social media network.
Yeah, and Grok has 100 million users, whereas ChatGPT has 1 billion, so 10 times smaller. And so he doesn't have the use of it. So what did he do? He just turned it into Airbnb. He started renting out Colossus to Anthropic and to Google. And so just in the last, 2 months, they announced 2 deals that I think are combined worth like $20 billion or more. $1 billion a month, so $12 billion a year to use his data center. And that's Google. Google themselves was the best at building data centers. And they need to rent from Colossus. And then same thing with Anthropic, where Anthropic is paying, over $1 billion also a month to rent out. Now, these are short-term agreements. They can cancel with like 90 days notice. So who knows, 5 years from now, it might just be a temporary stopgap solution. But again, failing forward, like figuring out like, okay, are we fucked? No. What if we did it this way? And then finding a way to survive in advance.
Yeah, they basically they put this S1 out, I think 4 or 6, I forget when, 1 or 2 months ago. And I think it was last week or maybe a Monday. It was almost like a quiet amending of the document that says, hey, Google just signed up to spend $1 billion a month with us to become a customer. And that's insane. That's such a huge number.
By the way, I have to think the 9D chess move there was that they knew and they sort of staggered the announcement. Maybe it was truly, oops, forgot to mention this, but I think it would have been smart if they intentionally did that too.
Yeah, it was cool.
Do you want to see any of these slides, by the way? Can I just run you through these? And
Did you have a sit down with your wife and you're like, okay, so hear me out. And you showed her like every slide?
No, that's you. I'm doing that with you right now. I told it to explain it to me like I'm Charlie Munger trying to understand the business. And it's like, okay, Charlie Munger would ask, like, is it in my circle of competence? How do I lose money here? Show me the incentives. What's the moat? Price is what you pay. The value is what you get. And so I started to basically break it down. Starlink is the part that makes money. XAI is the part that burns it. And the rockets are the railroads in between. You're not buying SpaceX. You're buying 3 different companies that are stapled together. You have the space launch business, the internet connectivity business, and the AI business. And then here's the high level numbers. So 18 billion in revenue, losing 2.5 billion, 6.6 of adjusted EBITDA.
I'm going to bring that up in a second.
Yeah, I think that's whack. They burned 8 billion of cash last year. This is the Starlink business. So it grew from 2 million subscribers to 10 million subscribers, but you can see like it is starting to slow down. So that's like one cause for concern was that Q1 this year was not high growth. And that the average revenue per paying user as they go into like more third world use cases of who needs internet where they have low connectivity, obviously they can't charge as much. They dominate the rocket business, 85% of all launches, 80% of all mass to orbit. Let's see. Everything is dependent on Starship, which is not a guarantee. And that's the big question. And then, they also bought Cursor. So they bought Cursor for $60 billion, or have an option to buy Cursor for $60 billion. And Cursor, I think, is at $3 or $4 billion in revenue. And so, like, again, trying to play catch up in the AI game by merging. Cursor needed to figure out a way to have compute and, their own models and a way to survive against Codex and Cloud Code. And so, like, it's this sort of game theory where the bottom players like in Survivor will form an alliance in order to flip the game on its head, basically. Let's see if there's anything else here. Oh, he owns 42% of the company. Do you know this?
Wow. No.
It's amazing. After 20 years, and you would think rockets are like the most capital intensive business that he's had to raise for. For him to still own 42%, just to put that in perspective, like Aaron Levy from Box, which is like cloud, a folder in the cloud. I think he owned 4% of Box when it went public. And he somehow still owns 42% and has 85% of the voting control. Like, it's unbelievable. Yeah, I have some other things about his comp package. It's pretty crazy. We can go there. But anyways, AI says Charlie Munger would put it in the too hard pile. It's a wonderful business at a silly price is the AI Charlie Munger conclusion. And it's a great business. You can admire it from afar. You didn't need to own it was the conclusion that he had.
It's just logic doesn't particularly matter. I don't think. I don't think that you can use like a traditional way of looking at this. An Elon asset is not a normal company. So it's really, it's hard. It's hard to price this. It's almost like this weird thing where I always thought it was interesting. Whenever you're like going through an M&A process, someone will say like, I'll buy this company for 15 times earnings. And what I like to do is change earnings to the word years. So it's like, I'm going to give you 15 years of payment right. up front. And when you look at this, the present value of a company is the sum of its future cash flows. When you look at this, you're like, it's hard to, I don't even know what it is. Is it 100 years? Is it hundreds of years? Is it 50? I'm not sure. But however the length of it is, at this point, it's so big likely that it's like, will Elon die or not?
I think the crazy thing about this, and even when why would somebody pay 15 years ahead is because you're growing. And so, yeah, it's 15 years at the current rate, but looking at the growth, that might only be 6. Might only be 4. But
right? Your growth rate is dependent on like you're making the Elon bet, which is can he figure it out? But I'm like, I don't even know if he exists by the time that like this like the you get the sum of your future cash flows on this one.
Well, here's what you'd need to believe. You'd need to believe that the Starlink business alone, which is at 11 billion in revenue, is probably going to grow to 30, 40, 50 billion in revenue over the next, let's call it 5 years. You'd need to believe that Starship works. And that they can take, so they can scale both Starlink as well as the data centers. So you need to believe that Starship works. You need to believe that data centers in space are going to be a thing. And with that, you'd have to also, I don't think this is as much of a you need to believe, as in it's not really a leap of faith. It's more of a realization, which is, Saudi Arabia made trillions of dollars because they owned the oil. They were the largest and lowest cost producer of oil and energy, and the world ran on energy. Well, if you look at the next 20 years, it seems like the world is going to run on compute. Every single business, every single consumer, every single robot, every single car, every single appliance is going to have a compute need. And so then there's a question of who's the Saudi Arabia of compute? And what you would be thinking with if he's the one who could put data centers in space, and data centers in space are going to be giving AI tokens at a maybe whether it's 50% or 200% lower cost than ground-based compute for inference, then he's Saudi Arabia in space. And he's the only one positioned to do that currently.
So they have a line item or a section of the S1 that talks about future business lines. And he actually says that mining asteroids is and potentially mining Mars and mining the moon for energy. And I guess that potentially means some type of oil or something like that. And so they actually have that covered as well.
Yeah. Of course, naturally, mineral mining on the
So
moon.
let me listen to this. So this is actually a super interesting thing. So listen to what the company's mission is. The mission is to make life multiplanetary and understand the true nature of the universe and extend the light of consciousness to the stars. And then it goes on to say that they want to create like a species level redundancy. So consciousness isn't tied to one planet, and that they don't want humans to have the same fate as dinosaurs. That's what it says at the top. That's the mission of the company. Is that crazy?
What's the Hampton mission?
Dude,
Let's just put those side by side.
dude, like, to connect people. But like the for 99% of the people, the mission of any business is to take the money in your bank account and to put it into my bank account. Okay. So it's really challenging for me to compare this to make life multiplanetary and make sure that we don't have the same fate as dinosaurs. This just isn't fair. So that's kind of incredible. Also,
I've met a few doctors, surgeons that have like kind of a God complex. And in some ways, it's like, look, if that's what it took to get you to become the best, I actually want my heart surgeon or my brain surgeon to have a bit of a God complex, a bit of a savior complex. I don't mind that he's got a bit of a God complex, a bit of a savior complex. It's okay. That's what it takes for just to be like, hey, you're already the richest man on earth. You want to sleep on the factory floor? You want to go ahead and build these and put it all on the line again? It takes something that is irrational to make man want to do that. And that could be noble. Or you could read into it like, it's kind of a bit of a insecurity personality defect.
No, that's not what I'm getting at. I wouldn't say that I'm the huge like Elon fanboy, but I think this mission's awesome. No, I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. I'm not mocking it. I think that it's incredible. I think it's inspiring. I think it makes it easier to inspire your employees. There's the famous story of like someone talking to the janitor who worked at NASA in 1968, the year before we went to the moon, and they said, "Sir, what do you do here?" He goes, "I'm helping us get to the moon." Like, I think that's awesome. I think the Wall Street Journal had an article on the blue collar workers at SpaceX and how much money that they were going to make on this. And they all seem incredibly inspired. So no, I'm on board. I think it's awesome.
So look at, I don't know if you saw this, but SpaceX IPO is expected to create over 4,000 new millionaires, including some cafeteria workers whose compensation packages included employee stock options. And then me and the SpaceX lunch lady, she becomes a millionaire.
Dude, that's so crazy. Yeah, I think it's great. Like the amount of wealth that's going to be created. I actually wonder, I don't know enough about economics, but like with all these new rich people being created with Anthropic, ChatGPT, and SpaceX, I wonder what that's going to do just to housing prices. Obviously, San Francisco is insane. Have you been seeing anything in San Francisco?
My sister just sold her house, but it was like pre the IPO chatter. And she didn't put it on the market. She bumped into a real estate agent and was like, I have somebody who's looking. The guy walked in, literally, this is not an exaggeration. He walked in for 5 minutes without his wife and made an all cash offer on the house at like what they were going to list it at. And that was it. It was done. He literally never came back even and bought the house. I've never seen anything like it.
It's just crazy. I wonder what's going to, obviously the coastal cities are going to like, things are going to change, but I wonder what it means for the rest of the country. What's this say?
So pour one out for Sam Bankman-Fried. He's on there's a lot of winners out of this IPO. He would be one of the losers out of this IPO because he had an investment in SpaceX that would have been worth $15 billion. And his overall portfolio, he had Anthropic, which would be worth $80 billion, because he was one of the earliest investors in Anthropic. He had Robinhood, which would be about $5 billion. He had Cursor. He was I think he was literally the first investor, maybe in the first round at least. And that would be, a $3 billion plus stake. He's got SpaceX, $15 billion, Solana, $5 billion. And his overall portfolio out of, his slush fund that he was illegally using customer funds to go invest, it'd be $114 billion today. He'd be seen as one of the greatest investors of all time.
Who gets those? Who gets the shares?
So they liquidated all these when they did the bankruptcy. So nobody won, actually. The people who bought out of the bankruptcy estate, it's kind of like when Tim Draper bought all that Bitcoin at a low price from the U.S. government when they seized the Silk Road Bitcoin. It's whoever bought the bankruptcy, the assets out of when they did the liquidation, that's who won.
That's insane. One thing that I want to call out, and I don't have a good explanation for this, but they talked about in the S1 about having like, okay, so the way it works is you see EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. Then they do this thing called adjusted EBITDA, which in my opinion makes no sense. I guess there's a lot of reasons as to why they do it, but the best way that I could explain it is, every month my wife and I, we sit down and we look at our budget. And we say, how much did we spend last month? Is that in line with what we predicted? Whatever. And so that can help us predict future expenses and let us know that we're keeping to our financial plan. Every once in a while, or rather in the first 6 months of us doing this, we kept saying to ourselves, well, we took this vacation, but like...
That's a one-off.
It's a one-off. We took our parents on vacation. It was to celebrate this thing. And then in month 6 of doing this, we're like, we just took this other once-in-a-lifetime vacation. And you know what? I think we just have to like assume that we're going to have these like one-off things, gifts, vacations, buying a car. So we just got to up the budget, and that's what we're going to do. Adjusted EBITDA is just like saying, you had this one-time lawsuit or this one-time, and I think in the case of SpaceX, it's about depreciation, which doesn't exactly make sense. They're like, we're going to have this one-time depreciation. I think that's what it said, plus earnings before interest and depreciation. I don't understand why you would add that adjust for, it doesn't make sense to me. Does that seem weird to you?
No, I mean, I think you're spot on. I think Buffett and Munger famously hated EBITDA as a thing. I think they just called it bullshit earnings. It's like our earnings are this, and then our bullshit earnings are this. And especially in a company that's so capital intensive, I think they had like 20 billion of capex spend in the last 12 months or something like that. Obviously, depreciation is very, very real. I think for software companies, it could be a little bit different, but this is not a software company. And then the adjustments, you're right. It's like, oh, except for we adjust back in for stock-based compensation. And it's like, well, that's how you pay the people to do the work. So why do you keep adding that back in? Is that going away anytime soon? Not really. For example, it might be the go public costs. Sure, that's an adjustment. But the adjustments tend to be far more favorable than that.
I think there was a few other funny things. I think they own like $2 billion worth of Bitcoin. And I think some of the adjustments was that Bitcoin price has gone down. Did you see that?
That's what I need, dude. I need my adjusted net worth. It's just adjusted for my stupid ass investments.
Yeah. And then another funny thing was they did a project where they paid a vendor in shares, and the strike price of the shares was like $4.20. I think it was like $42.20 or something like that. And then I think that when they did like a 409A valuation for Twitter, it was like, I'm screwing up the exact numbers, but I think if it was $42 billion, they made it like $42 billion, like 420. And like if you do like a control F 420, it's everywhere. And that's kind of insane.
It's the most try hard part of Elon. I despise his 420 obsessions.
Is there a I've never read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Is there like a 420? Is this like a weed 420 reference?
It's a weed 420 thing. Yeah. It's hey guys, I'm cool too, right? I think in Hitchhiker's Guide it's like 42. That's the number for the universe, but that's not, I think, why he's doing 420.
Okay, well, yeah, I wasn't sure, but that's pretty silly. What's this?
Shout out to the Ontario Canada Teachers Pension Fund, which in 2019 decided, you know what, we're going to slang an investment into SpaceX. Back before SpaceX was pretty obvious, and they're going to make $12 billion this year. And in the IPO, which more than funds their pension, it's $33,000 per teacher that's in the fund for the 300-something thousand teachers that are in the pension fund. So I think that's pretty cool and a great move by the Ontario Fund, which is also hilarious because I'm pretty sure they like boycott Elon, but like whoops.
Yeah, that's pretty hypocritical. Did you put a appendix on your slideshow with just funny tweets? Because that would be wonderful.
Yeah, this was manual because Claude don't have that sense of humor that I have, so I had to do this work myself. Can I tell you a couple other nuggets that I thought were interesting?
Yeah.
Did you see who else is on the cap table?
No, not really.
So I'm always interested with these IPOs, like who, I don't know. This part of the episode is brought to you by Pocket Watchers. I want to know who else is getting rich out of this.
Of course,
and,
dude, when I was watching the Knicks game the other day, I kept pausing. I'm like zooming in. I'm like, who's that
courtside?
Person? Who's that person?
Dude,
who's that person?
I'm begging for this courtside app. I just want somebody to take a picture of the entire courtside seats and tell me who everyone is, what they do, and how they made their money. And I'd like that for every single game.
And like
at least every playoff game.
The schleppier the guy, the more I want to know. Because I would zoom in, I'm like,
Yeah,
this guy.
Chalamet, move your head. Who is that guy?
Yeah, it's like, I get why you're famous. You're hot.
Who's the guy with the triple chin that's courtside in New Balances?
Yeah.
Like, how much waste management does he do?
Yeah, that's all I want to know is who's the schleppiest looking
Not
person.
even the New York ones. When they're playing in San Antonio or Oklahoma City,
yeah.
I'm just like, oh, what is that? Oh, he collects all the used chicken wing bones from restaurants all around the country and turns it into bone broth. Like, that's what this guy does. That's
There's
amazing.
this funny video of this like guy who looks exactly like you're describing. I forget exactly where it was, maybe Canada, but Drake's sitting at the game, and this guy and Drake are sitting next to each other. He looks like he's 60 years old. He's got a beer belly, and he's just sitting there, and he looks like he's like laughing hilariously. And they put the camera on Drake, and everyone's cheering, and the guy looks over to Drake, and he goes, "Are you famous or something?" And Drake was like, "Yeah, I'm kind of famous." And then like the meme actually found that guy's identity, and he's significantly wealthier than Drake, and he's like this big shot who no one knows, and he owns some type of like boring business, and it was pretty funny.
By the way, that's one of the only cool things you can say to a celebrity. Like, I've actually played this scenario out in my mind many times of like, how do you, if you actually see someone really famous, like, if you avoid it, lame, no story. You go up to him, you ask for a picture, no way. Just, you walk away with a picture and no dignity. You annoyed them. Like, what do you go tell them you're a big fan? What do you actually do? I think, what you just said, which is like, are you famous or something, is great, because then they have to be like, yeah, I'm Drake. Then they just have a blank face. Like, I'm a rapper. They're like, okay. And they're like, and then you have to start justifying yourself. Like, that would be great.
Yeah.
I want to do that to Drake.
Dude, 6 months ago, I saw this guy in the street, and he was a cool looking dude. He was young. He looked around my age, and he had this beautiful dog with him. And I was out to eat, like on the street, like we were at a sidewalk table, and he was just standing there. It looked like he was waiting for his wife or something. And I walk over, I'm like, man, that's a beautiful dog. I had a dog that looked just like that. And I showed him photos of my dog. I showed him my tattoo. And I just learned, I hung out for 20 minutes. He's like, yeah, I just moved here. I'm so liking New York City, this and that. And I was like, cool. And these people were like staring at him. And I'm like, are you famous? What are you doing? He goes, yeah, I just, I play for the Knicks. My name's Landry. And he told me his last name. What's his last name? Is it
Shamit.
What is it?
Shamit.
Dude, I totally had the opening. Like, his wife came over. My wife was talking to his wife. We totally had the opening where I could have like exchanged. Like,
you didn't notice he's 6'5"?
No, I didn't. Everyone in New York is like good looking, like and striking looking. I just thought he was a dude. And
you didn't notice he looks like the original Jesus? Like, does he look like Jesus?
I don't know, man. He didn't.
You should have been
know.
like, oh, it's Jesus. That's why everyone's staring.
He didn't look like that. No, in real life.
I'm surprised you didn't tell him, like, sorry, everyone's staring. I have a podcast.
Sorry, do you use Twitter?
I think it's because I'm on the Knicks.
No, I literally sat with him for 20 minutes talking about his dog. And like, there was totally, by the way, some chemistry going on where we could have like, you just moved here. I just moved here. We should, do you want to do
Your
this?
leashes intertwined and you left it that way for a bit.
And I thought he was like a walk-on. I thought he was just like the lucky guy. And then I see him last night and I'm like, Landry, what's good, dog? I had that moment.
My brother-in-law has a great move. He pulls with famous people where if he sees them, he saw Mike Tyson once and we were walking and he just goes up to him and he's, Mike, what's up, man? Good to see you. And he just daps him up. And he just says, good to see you, like as if he's seen them before. And then they're like, who's this guy? Seems like he knows me. I must know him. So they just treat him really well and they just dap it up and they move on with their day. And I've seen him do this now 4 or 5 times. And I have to say, this is currently like the best move that I've seen anyone do with these people.
I use my kids now. I saw Tom Hanks recently at a pizza place and it was just me, my daughter, and him at this pizza place. And I was like, I don't really want to like approach him, but like, it's kind of the greatest guy ever. So I let my daughter walk. I saw which way he was walking. And I was like, Naomi, walk that way. And she walked and like intercepted it. And he was like, oh, hey, little girl, how are you? And he started talking to her. And I was like, yeah, got it. And so I heard his voice and it was awesome. So I do that now.
Yeah, use your child as bait.
Yeah.
Naturally, the thing to do. Back to who's famous on this list. I'm going to read you a name. I want you to tell me if you even know who this person is. Antonio Gracias.
He's like his buddy who like started a hedge fund.
Yeah, so the second biggest shareholder of SpaceX is Antonio, who owns about 7% of the company. He's the only one over the 5% threshold as an individual, I think. And it's through, he has this thing called Valor. And basically, Antonio, he's in Elon's biography a bunch, which is he had been like, I think post-business school, they started like buying like businesses that did manufacturing but weren't being run well, and like a meat packing business or stuff like that. And so he just got really good at like running and operating businesses that had manufacturing or production facilities. And so when Elon needed help with like early days of Tesla or early days of SpaceX, he would just bring Antonio in to like, can you help me figure out the bottlenecks in the production line and the factory and like how we should be doing things differently? And they kind of both like, he became his study buddy for ramping up production. And Antonio was always there to help. There's a story about how when Tesla was like on the brink, he loaned Elon like, I don't know, $1 million or something like that. Personally, not for any equity, just like, you need it, here you go. And so he's going to make like $90 billion in this IPO.
Oh my God.
Which is incredible.
There's also a guy, one time when I hosted a HustleCon dinner at your office, there was this guy named Steve who came.
All right, big news. We just hit 300,000 subscribers on Spotify. Thank you to everybody who subscribed. If you're not, go there and watch the episodes on Spotify. It's the best place to watch our podcast.
And back then, I knew Steve via my friend Neville. He owns this thing called, helped start this thing called Gigafund. Have you heard of Gigafund?
Mm-hmm.
It's a fund, but started by two guys. Steve, who is I'm acquaintance.
I don't know Steve. Luke is the other guy.
So
right?
Luke is one of the PayPal founders, I believe, or founding team members. And Steve and Luke got this thing going. And at the time, I don't know if they described it as this, but it was pretty much, it was called the Gigafund, and it was just fund Elon. And this is me talking, not them, but they would say like, we're just going to raise money and invest in Elon. And I believe they are one of the big shots as well. But Steve was actually at your office. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that, because even though you hosted events in my office, I didn't really get the invite all the time to go attend them.
That's not true.
I was working. I want to read you an email. I have open right now a email from somebody who used to be at Founders Fund. And Gigafund spun out of Founders Fund. Luke was at Founders Fund, and then he left to start Gigafund. So the email basically says, one of the smartest and bravest things I ever saw someone do was when Luke was at Founders Fund, he just kind of like sat back and realized that the optimal way for him to invest was simply to just back every Elon company. And that's it. Take all the money and put it into the Elon companies. And at the time, that seemed like, kind of crazy, because Elon was doing pretty crazy companies. And in addition, it also seemed not sophisticated, which I think is the underrated part of this, and actually the part that's more interesting to me. Like if you look back, like the last 15 years, all you had to do was buy like Google and Facebook and Amazon and just sit on your hands. You didn't need to do anything. Bitcoin and chill. You didn't need to do anything. Like we all want to do advanced, complicated, smart, sophisticated sounding things. But in reality, if you just pick the right horse, and in some cases, like what I'm talking about with Google and Facebook and Amazon, these were obvious horses. These are not like, it was not a surprise to anyone in 2010 that those were going to be important companies over the next 15 years. And you just had to not do other shit. Famously, Bill Gates selling his Microsoft stock. Bill Gates would be the wealthiest man in the world had he just not sold his Microsoft stock. Chamath, after Facebook, started his own fund and then started doing SPACs and bought the Warriors, and he's done this and that and this and that and this and that. All he had to do was just hold his Facebook stock from when he was an employee. He would have done better than everything he's done since then. So we seek out sophistication, we seek out activity, but simplicity is actually a more powerful thing if you get it right. And so this email basically says like, I remember when he said that. I remember what everybody was thinking. And
was it like a chain email? Like he to announce that he was leaving and he sent it to like his buddies?
No. This is somebody who was at Founders Fund just emailing me, telling me about this.
Oh, wow.
And so, and it always kind of stuck with me. And now when I'm looking at this filing and you see Gigafund and Luke Nosek.
Oh, they're listed. So they have a huge stake.
They have a huge stake.
Got it. I was never sure how big it actually got, but I remember Steve through a friend of a friend, someone was telling me Steve's story, and he was like, he had this company that was like doing really well, but he kind of quit it to just do this. And I'm like, that's it? That's all he does? And
Yeah.
I remember I had the same emotion. I'm like, but why would he? There's got to be more to it. And
Yeah,
obviously,
you can do that, but you should also do X, Y, Z. It's like, no, actually, you should not do X, Y, Z in addition. You should just do the one thing. So I thought that was pretty funny. Steve Jurvetson is who I thought you were going to say. Do you know Steve Jurvetson?
Yeah, I do.
He started DFJ, like a fund. Now he's got his own fund, Future Ventures. I've met him once. Really surprised, like just a not really nice guy.
He's like a wacky,
really
like silly,
wacky a true futurist. And if you go, I think a fun, interesting read is go Google, if you're a true business nerd, go Google Steve Jurvetson and go look at his Flickr. That's right, Flickr, like the old photo sharing website. For some reason, he's like an amateur photographer. He loves to, like, he would go and take pictures of the early rocket launches at SpaceX and shit like that. And like, you know, the first Bitcoin mining rig, he'll go take a picture and he's talking about Bitcoin back in 2012 and he's excited about Bitcoin. And he would basically take a photo, post it on Flickr and write like a caption that was essentially a blog post, but why he's really excited about a certain technology. I've actually learned a lot just by going and reading Steve's Flickr. I think there's very few true like futurists in the world, and he's one of them. And he was one of the earliest investors at Tesla, earliest investors at SpaceX, never sold a single share, which is the other remarkable thing, is to hold through all the ups.
His wife, Genevieve, was my boss at my first job ever. And so I knew Genevieve very well.
She's cool, yeah.
Yeah, and she and I'm friends with her on Facebook. And so like I've seen like this whole thing, and like I see all these like cool photos of what they're doing, and it's like going to rocket launches, this and that, and it's been really cool to like see behind the scenes a little bit of that. And so that's been kind of funny as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons on this podcast I try to be more optimistic and benefit of the doubty with, I don't know, technology and future. Like, yeah, a lot of people get things wrong. Yeah, a lot of people build dumb stuff. Yeah, a lot of stuff doesn't work. That's pretty obvious. And I do that for two reasons. One is I have this phrase, which is like, pessimists get to be right and optimists get to be rich. If you hang out in Silicon Valley long enough, you realize that pessimism is a losing strategy when you're around innovation and technology. It pays to be an optimist. That's the first thing. The second thing is I had a friend recently who had a family member who was dealing with like health issues and had that like, health issues for decades. And this kind of like, it was resolved to like, I have to live with this. And then on our podcast, we've talked about that guy from GitLab who like is curing his own cancer using AI. And, that sounds like futuristic, but like he actually, did it. It's not like a theoretical thing. Like at least one person did it. And so he went back home recently and, on the East Coast and was like, hey, I've been talking to Claude and I got some ideas. We could try this. And if I get this data, I can feed it to here and I can do this. And what I told him, I was like, it's not that, there are different types of people. They resist it and we don't. We are in the bubble where you hear about people doing these remarkable things. It becomes normalized. It feels possible. It's like the Roger Bannister 4-minute mile type of thing. Like once you hear that somebody cured their own cancer with AI, guess what? You're going to approach somebody, a loved one with cancer very differently than you would have if you had just not heard that was possible. And one of the great things about hopefully listening to this podcast, but also just generally being around ambitious, interesting, innovative people is that you get that normalization of what's not normal. You get to hear, you get your frame broken enough where you will, in your own situations of life, approach it slightly differently. And, because I think part of this is like, it's just Elon glazing and it's SpaceX glazing. But like another part of it is like, damn, this dude literally called his shot 20 years ago. Self-taught, learned how to, build rockets and recruit this team. It did what was, pretty much impossible. And then today is the biggest tech IPO in history. You have to, respect that. And also like, forget about how good it is for them, but like, let it break your frame a little bit so that in your life, when opportunities strike or an idea comes, you don't count yourself out. You don't miss that opportunity. You don't ignore what's in front of you and you actually take action.
One of my biggest takeaways of living in Silicon Valley for 10 years was to use the word mostly and almost more often than not. And what I mean by that is I used to say things like, that will never happen, or that cannot happen, or that's impossible. And then I started changing this to where I see something I think's unlikely. I almost always try to say, it almost never works, but sometimes it does. or like, it mostly ends this way instead of saying that will fail and it will end this way. I've seen this so many times where I think in my head, like too black and white of like, if A, then B, if someone has this idea, it cannot work or this cannot happen. And and you have to train yourself to always think in like, not absolutes, but like the odds are this, but those are still like odds that like if enough people try, it could work.
Well, speaking of the impossible, one thing I wanted to bring up was the his pay package. I didn't know this until I was digging in, so I thought it was kind of new learning. So you remember at Tesla when he had that like crazy, Elon had that crazy pay package idea, and he was like, yeah, like if we become, the world's most valuable car company by far, if we get to like, 500 billion in value and we're delivering this many cars and we do this and we do this, then I get this like huge pay package. And if I don't, I get nothing.
And it's like laughable when they sign it. They're like, yeah, dude, whatever. You do that. And then it happens and people freak out over it.
Exactly. There's a compilation of people of mocking it, laughing, being like, this is ridiculous, never going to happen, blah, blah, blah. So ludicrous. But, whatever. And then it happens and he gets the money and then a dude with 8 shares sues him in Delaware and says, no, that shouldn't have been approved. That's too generous. And it's like, dude, it was seen as impossible before. And he got stripped of the pay package and then blah, blah, blah. He ended up getting revoted in, reinstated. But
the plaintiff was like, nuh-uh. That was basically the argument.
Yeah, it's insane. Have you seen what his pay package is here? And he has like the same one. Okay, so let me just read this to you. So the very first one is called the Mars Award. So Elon gets 1 billion shares in SpaceX.
How much? How many points is that?
So it's going public at $135. So that'd be 135 billion at today's value. But obviously, if he did all this stuff, it would be worth a lot more than today's value. It would be the total grants are like $750 billion. That's his like hypothetical comp if he hits all these things. But now listen to what he's going to hit. 2 things are required. 1, the market cap has to grow to $7.5 trillion, which would be the most valuable company ever. And 2, a permanent self-sustaining colony on Mars of at least 1 million people. Both have to happen for him to get paid. That's the Mars Award.
That's crazy.
1 million people living on Mars. The other one is the AI CEO Award. So this is 300 million shares, so a third of that. This is kind of like the consolation prize, you know what I mean? Like this is like a little ice cream he gets as a treat, which is the company goes to 6.5 trillion in value, and he's delivering 100 terawatts of compute per year from non-Earth data centers. So he does the space data center thing and delivers 100 terawatts of compute per year. Now, you might be wondering, 100 terawatts, I don't really know how to put that in perspective. Guess how much, so he's trying to, he gets it if he does 100. Guess how much the total kind of current U.S. Terawatt production is?
I don't even know what a terawatt is. So we're talking like a unit, you said 750? Is that what you said?
If he does 100, he gets the award.
100.
So what is that relative to all of the U.S.?
So he gets money at 100. What's the current U.S. at? I don't know.
Take a guess.
50.
So that would be like if he doubled the U.S. total electric grid, that'd be pretty crazy, right? It's currently 1 terawatt. So we'd have to 100x the entire U.S. grid just to get this award.
In space.
From space data centers, yes. From something that doesn't even exist and people don't even believe is possible. So yeah. Goals. Yeah. Set big goals, I guess.
It's hard
and
to
if he
reply
does
to
that, by the way, his base salary on the way is 0. I mean, he owns obviously a huge percentage of the company anyways, but like this is the additional grant he gets for continuing to work in the company.
This is crazy, man. It goes back to the factor, like the biggest risk is that he dies. That's the
biggest risk is that he dies.
The biggest risk is that he dies. Like the biggest risk is that he doesn't like, if I'm a shareholder, I'm like, you must have a dietitian. You must have a sleep coach. Like that's what we're talking here.
Or is it like a John Jones situation where
like the more
it's
coke
the
you do,
wildness that creates the fighter, you know what I mean? And if you put him on that sleep at 8 p.m. schedule, he's not John Jones anymore.
Dude, I talked to a person who trains professional athletes and he was like, it's so funny. I used to train these baseball players, and the ones that were the most eager and did exactly what I said and came to me all the time and said, give me more. I want more. I want to do this. They almost always were never as good as the guys who were like eating M&Ms or doing eating poorly and like going to bed at late because they played video games all night, and they just show up. And like, he was like, one guy made like a game-winning shot, and afterwards I was like so excited. I ran up and high-fived him, and he's like, what are you doing, man? He's like, you did the shot. He's like, oh, whatever, dude, who cares? And he like kept walking. He's like, the guys who cared, treat them mean, keep them keen. The guys who cared the least amount and like tried, not exactly tried, but like put brain space on like the effort were the best. And maybe that's what's happening here. The weirder that things are, the better that he's going to perform.
Yeah, which is, but I mean, how crazy is it that when we hear this stuff, it's like can he make Starship work? Can he make an orbital data center work? It's like, we think the higher risk is just that he dies. It's like in the probabilities game, we're like, I don't know, the bigger risk seems like that.
You've learned so many times in a row that it's not wise to bet against. So I don't think that, like, I'm a dumb idiot, and we should preface this before this episode, don't listen to anything. But the one thing that is true is that he's a challenging person to bet against. And so all these science fiction-y things, I think that he's bad at timelines, but I think he's good at doing it eventually.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, the Glaze Fest is over.
So,
if you hated Elon, we're sorry.
Yeah.
This wasn't the episode for you if you hate Elon. Hate to break it to you. Maybe the thumbnail should have given that away. But if you made it all the way here and you hate watched this whole thing, I'm sorry. It's like, that percentage of the population that they taste, what is it? Like the thing, cilantro?
Cilantro,
and it tastes like bleach to them, like genetically. This might have been the cilantro for some people. And I'm sorry if it was.
All right. That's it. That's the pod.
I feel like I could rule the world. I know I could be what I want to. I put my all in it like no days off. On the road, let's travel, never looking back.
All right, let's take a quick break to talk about a podcast. Because if you're listening to this, you like podcasts. And what's better than one podcast? Another podcast. And let me tell you, another podcast you should check out. It's called Success Story. If you like hearing about different success stories and hearing Q&A sessions with successful business leaders, or hearing keynote presentations, or just checking out conversations about sales and business and marketing tactics, this is a great podcast for you. So check it out wherever you get your podcasts.